This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenivek, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
And a very good afternoon, everybody, live on radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. We are across the platforms. Carol Massar, along with Matthew Miller, in for Tim Stenivek again. So much again for a quiet day in August.
Yeah, it has been crazy in terms of the amount of earnings we got yesterday after the bell, this morning before the bell, what we're going to get later today. A ton of movement under the surface, but if you just look at the Dow and the S&P, you're really not seeing that much change in the benchmark indexes or in treasuries, I will say. Nothing on the 10 years, still at 420, which is a great place to be.
It's like Friday, like never happened-ish.
Yeah, it's like we clawed back almost everything that we lost on Friday. We lost 101 points on the S&P on Friday. We gained back 92 points yesterday, and now we're down about 10. So we still have about 20 to go until we get back to Thursday.
All right, we have some big earnings coming up after the close, including AMD, Snap, Rivian, Supermicro. That's going to come up a little bit later. We're going to also get into what we are getting out of the White House and the president when it comes to more trade and tariffs, from pharmaceuticals to semis to big trading partners like India, where we are today on all of that. We're also going to get a couple of views from the C-suite. It continues so important in terms of figuring the macro outlook. So, Matt, we've got with us the Axon co-founder and CEO, Rick Smith. This is a company you're really interested in.
Don't tase me, bro. I have tased myself, actually.
Are we surprised?
And look, they want to work towards a future where bullets are obsolete, or at least that's one of the taglines.
All right, we're going to get into that. And also, we've got the CFO of the e-commerce firm MercadoLibre, also out with earnings. Both stocks on the move in today's session. Let's get you going with a look on the trade on this Tuesday. Here is Amy Morrison for Charlie Pellet.
All right. Thank you so much, Carol. The U.S. services sector stagnated in July, firms reducing headcounts because of tepid demand and rising costs. Now, that slowed the rally in the stock market. You're absolutely right. It's pretty much flat. It's not a nightmare, though. S&P 500 down about 0.1%. NASDAQ down about 0.2%. The Dow is little changed on the upside. 10-year Treasury yield at 4.2%. The 2-year yield at 3.72%. The Kremlin also weighing options for a concession to President Trump, including an air truce with Ukraine to try to head off the threat of secondary sanctions, and that has moved energy markets. WTI and Brent crude right now both about 1.3% lower. Palantir Technologies reporting a 48% increase in revenue for the second quarter to more than $1 billion, citing the impact of AI tech on its businesses. Shares of Palantir about 8% higher now after the company revised its sales higher for the year. President Trump says Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told him he doesn't want to be nominated to replace Jay Powell as the next chair of the Federal Reserve. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Amy Morris. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. We go back now to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Massar and Matt Miller.
All right, gotcha, Amy. Thank you so much. Well, India's government is scrambling to contain the economic fallout from President Trump's threatened tariff action, which has left some officials in New Delhi reeling. Meantime, in terms of what we got from the president earlier this morning on CNBC, he talked about maybe U.S. tariffs on semiconductors and pharmaceutical imports, which would be announced, quote, within the next week or so. This as the administration really gets ready to target key economic sectors in its effort to remake global trade. Here's what the president said.
I'll go into pharmaceuticals. Yeah. They make a fortune with pharmaceuticals, and they make our pharmaceuticals in China and Ireland and everything else. And pharmaceuticals, we'll be putting a initially small tariff on pharmaceuticals, but in 1 year, 1.5 years maximum, it's going to go to 150%, and then it's going to go to 250%, because we want pharmaceuticals made in our country.
All right, that, of course, was President Trump earlier on CNBC. One thing, Matt, I want to add to that, the U.S. is looking at ways to equip ships with better location tracking capabilities. So
chips.
Microchips. So
like they want to put an air tag on those tiny, eensy-weensy, itsy-bitsy little microchips.
Yeah, like, you know, that,
good luck.
Like that Apple tag?
Yeah.
This is to curtail the flow of semis made by the likes of NVIDIA to China. All right. Tracking all of it, there's a lot coming at us, is Bloomberg News senior editor for technology and strategic industries. He's Michael Shepard. He's out there in our DC bureau. Mike, a lot going on here. Get us up to speed on what we are hearing from the president when it comes to various sectors and what we are getting in terms of still waiting for terms with some big trading partners.
Well, on the tariffs front, one of the most significant things that we heard from Donald Trump today was a timeline for both the pharma tariffs and the levies that we have long been expecting to come on semiconductors. He has been going sector by sector, as we've already seen, in addition to his country-by-country reciprocal tariffs. But he has already targeted the auto industry, the steel and aluminum industries, with levies aimed at trying to boost more output and production here at home. And next, he's moving on to the drug industry and chip makers. And the idea is, again, to try to get them to build more plants here in the U.S., spur domestic investment in plants and production, and maybe try to boost hiring as well, and perhaps also goose some exports in those areas. It's going to be a long road, though. Even if he announces those tariffs in the next week or so, it will take years for those plants to actually be built, for companies to migrate. And in the meantime, a number of companies, businesses, consumers will face the prospect of potentially higher costs based on the increases in those inputs. Remember, chips are in everything. It is not just the AI accelerators that we heard so much about from the likes of Meta Platforms and Microsoft Corp when it comes to their AI businesses. It goes down to all the way down to things like those light-up sneakers that small children wear. They're in cars, they're in everything. So businesses have been bracing for this, and they're going to have to really read the fine print when those tariffs come out to see if there are any exemptions whatsoever. We're not expecting any, but some companies are still holding out hope.
You know, we just report the news.
Yep.
We don't editorialize or give our opinions, but you got to point out when something makes no sense at all, Shep. And the president on Sunday said he was going to lower drug prices for American consumers by 1,400 to 1,500%, which is mathematically impossible unless drug producers are paying customers. At the same time, he wants to have tariffs at 250% on imported pharmaceuticals, which is almost all of them. So how does any of that make any sense at all?
Well, the math really is not working when you lay it out just on paper. He even talked today about increasing the drug tariffs, starting small, and then after a year increasing very significantly to 150 or 200%. Matt, if you think about trying to build a drug plant, it takes years for that to happen. Let's think on a 4 or 5 year timeline. And he is not talking about that. He has a sense of urgency, and he wants to see these results immediately. In his mind, these plants should already be underway, and he is expecting investment from U.S. trading partners, including the European Union, from Japan and others, to really start plowing that money into the ground and start getting those factories underway.
Mike, what do we know, though? I mean, already we've talked about Puerto Rico, right? Certainly in the past being a big home to big pharma. There's been some back and forth there, but I mean, we already do it. Is it that we've maxed out what we can do, or what?
Well, part of the problem is that a lot of other jurisdictions outside the U.S. have for years been lower cost, and they have offered themselves as a venue to produce these medicines and even medical equipment at a far lower cost. And that actually has benefited consumers here in the U.S. over the years, even though it doesn't look like it. Producing a lot of that material here in the United States would be more expensive based on labor costs, land costs, regulatory hurdles, and other things. Some of these the president has promised to sweep aside, especially in the land use and permitting and rules-based side. But there are other structural issues, too, and that includes the labor supply and whether there is a workforce. And this is especially true for semiconductors and other advanced technology. Having enough people who can move into the precision tooling, the advanced engineering jobs in the factories that could step in and take those jobs right away. And Matt, when you were asking about the math question, when it comes to chip making, one of the biggest inputs in a new plant, and these are the kinds of factories that the president and his team want to see built across, in certain locations in the U.S., one of the biggest inputs is the semiconductor manufacturing equipment itself, the deep ultraviolet lithography machines made by one company in the world, and that's ASML in the Netherlands. Now, chips tariffs could increase the cost of those machines, which run about $400 million apiece, by another as much as $100 million. And for companies that are planning those plants, it is a big cost to have to absorb all of a sudden.
Well, maybe that's why when President Trump was talking about the TSMC investment in its Arizona chip-making plants, which has previously been stated at $165 billion. The president said now it's a $300 billion investment. He just doubled that number. You know, also for fun, I want to ask about chips, Shep, because the idea of putting a tracking device on our teensy weensy, itsy bitsy, most advanced AI semiconductors. I mean, the space constraints, the thermal budget, the power consumption, the signal interference, seems like it would be difficult.
It's a great question, and I've asked folks in the chip industry whether this capability is theoretically possible, and they have said yes. But they are wary of doing it for a number of reasons. One is that they don't want to create the appearance of their possibly being some sort of a backdoor to the U.S. government, that other buyers outside the United States might be able to see that, oh, wait, the U.S. government has some means of following us, tracking us, finding us, knowing where we are, and maybe knowing what we are using these chips for. Yeah. NVIDIA Corp, for instance, the maker of the most advanced AI chips, has insisted that there is no such backdoor, but it is theoretically possible, Matt, and it is something that's key to the administration's strategy of exporting more chips, more AI compute globally.
Not to sound like a crazy nut, but Mike, couldn't it already be there, a tracking device?
Well, it is theoretically possible that they're already in there.
I feel like it's terribly unlikely. You have a very small piece of real estate, and you're trying to put as much of the tiniest circuitry in the world on it.
I understand, but do you know what they already put on that tiny little circuitry?
I have no idea.
Amazing capabilities. So tracking, would that be such a big deal?
I mean, look how big an AirTag is.
All right. This is a little debate that Matt and I are having. All right, Mike Shepard, so appreciate it. Bloomberg News Senior Editor for Technology and Strategic Industries out there in our D.C. bureau. We're going to stay in D.C. We also want to talk kind of bigger picture, the U.S. relationships with some of its trading partners, including with India, and why it matters. We did see the rupee fall near its record low after President Trump said he would raise tariffs on Indian exports because the nation's purchases of oil from Russia. It's complicated. So let's try and demystify it with Bloomberg Economics Senior Geoeconomics Analyst for Asia Pacific. We are talking about Adam Farrar, and he joins us from our Washington, D.C. bureau. All right. So, Adam, where are we when it comes to the president and India? And what do we need to understand about the importance of the U.S. trade relationship with India?
So to start with, I think we've seen a very clear evolution in the relationship in the past week or so, with the president escalating his rhetoric and increasingly putting pressure on India to come to the table and bring a bigger package for trade negotiations. And you might be surprised that we're saying trade negotiations here when obviously the top line seems to be related to Russia. But while there's certainly, a question out there as to whether the president really is focused on Russia and that's what's driving his escalation on this question of Indian oil imports, our take is that this is about leverage in the now increasingly difficult trade negotiations with India that have been dragging on since actually before the April 2nd announcements of reciprocal tariffs starting in early February. And, Trump, as we've seen time and time again, is out there seeking to escalate to get better leverage at the table and get India where he wants them. Now, for everyone keeping track, India has emerged as a major, potential partner for the United States and a major opportunity to push back on China's dominance in both manufacturing and global trade. And the Biden administration spent significant effort to try and pull the Indians out of their general non-aligned position into a position where they're closer to the United States, and doing that through advanced technology cooperation, through the major developments in co-manufacturing, including of advanced jet engines, all designed to bring India within the fold. But here we are, with New Delhi really shocked by how the president has turned things around.
I want to ask about the Russian oil imports, and it reminds me to some extent of Iran and China. We all remember hearing the president say, like multiple times, that he doesn't mind if China buys Iranian oil after the U.S. attacks. And then all of a sudden, when Bessent and Greer go to negotiate with China, they're angry that China's buying Iranian oil, even though the president of the United States said they could. In terms of India, right, we have put sanctions on Russian oil, and so have the Europeans. And yet, it's been clear to everybody all along that India buys the oil from the Russians, refines it, and then turns around and sells those refined products back to Europe. This is kind of like an emperor wears no clothes thing, isn't it? I mean, was anyone surprised?
So to be clear, all India's purchases fall within a loophole that was designed by the U.S. and the EU as they set out their sanctions regime against the Russians. These are not illegal purchases. And so the idea here was to actually both cushion the broader oil market and ensure stability, which was a key goal not only of the Biden administration, but obviously of the Trump administration as well. And at the same time, kind of diversify some of the oil refining away from China and decrease some of the profits from China and push those to India and enable some of that oil to still flow to Europe, which was necessary as they continue to transition away from Russian fuel.
But the idea was to stop revenues going to Vladimir Putin so that he couldn't fund weapons to attack Ukraine, right? And then Europe ends up actually doing that through this loophole.
Correct. Now, this did fall within the price cap that was established to try and ensure that they were not getting outsized benefits. But from the start, the EU and the United States took a position to not go after oil imports writ large because of the massive reliance not only of Europe, but of the global market on Russian oil.
All right. So how important is the trade relationship between U.S. and India? And I asked that after having talked to Mark Gurman yesterday. We know Apple iPhones are now made in India, and we've increasingly seen Apple trying to diversify its supply chain. So it is important in terms of how it might impact certainly the United States and the U.S. consumer. What do we need to know? Give me some size and scope so we understand what's at stake here.
So you kind of hit the nail on the head right there, which is the prospects of India-U.S. trade are significant. And particularly as we look to push, as the United States looks to push manufacturing and other production out of China, India has been this massive potential for taking over particularly some of this electronics production and filling lots of gaps that the Chinese currently fill. But in the current situation with tariffs set to rise to 25%, there's a real risk here to the amount of goods that can really come out of India and be competitive. Bloomberg Economics sees a potential drop of over 30% of exports from India to the United States, which could amount to almost a 0.6% drop in Indian GDP over the medium term. And that's just based on the bilateral relationship and doesn't take into account the reality of the new tariff rates for other regional competitors like Vietnam, which are now locked in at a lower 20% and may become even more competitive, further undermining the Indian market. So I think we haven't yet seen how bad this can get. And the Indians are certainly focused on still getting to a deal while holding their ground. We
should point out that the U.S. had a trade deficit with India of about $43 billion last year. That was the 11th largest, according to figures from the International Monetary Fund.
Yeah, if you use ECTR Go, you can see that we buy $87 billion worth of stuff from them. They buy $45 billion worth of stuff from us. So not a negligible trading partner.
And again, this is goods, right? Because we've often talked about like the services.
Yes, that's a really important
that the
point.
United States has with the world. So we got to remind everybody that trade is made up of a lot of different things. Hey, Adam, thank you so much. Adam Farrar, he's Senior Geoeconomics Analyst for Asia Pacific at Bloomberg Economics, joining us from D.C. When we come back, we are talking with a member of the C-suite. We're going to talk with the CFO of MercadoLibre. That's next.
$221 on Wall Street. I'm Amy Morris. The U.S. services sector stagnated as firms reduced headcount because of tepid demand and rising costs. Markets responded as the stocks wiped out gains. We do check markets for you all day long at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 down 0.3%, NASDAQ down 0.4%, and the Dow is down 0.10. 0.1%. My goodness. 10-year Treasury yield at 4.2%. The 2-year yield at 3.72%. The U.S. government plans to borrow an unprecedented $100 billion in a single Treasury debt sale this week. Now, Treasury's been boosting bill sales to rebuild its cash balance after the debt ceiling was lifted. And President Trump says U.S. tariffs on semiconductor and pharmaceutical imports would be announced within the next week or so. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, you can subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Amy Morris. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Let's go back to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Matt Miller.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Amy, thank you. Hey, listen, we have been really lucky in checking in on the C-suite this week. And a lot of it has to do because so many companies around, certainly across the United States, but around the globe, also reporting their results. Shares of MercadoLibre, they are actually trading up about 2.8% in today's session. They were lower in the pre-market, but certainly in the regular session, investors coming in. This is after the e-commerce firm posted earnings that missed estimates as the company ramps up marketing spending to recruit more users. Now, a move to lower the threshold for free shipping in Brazil also crimping profitability. We'll get into that in just a moment. We'll point out analysts see strategic value in these initiatives, saying they will help shore up long-term growth even as they weigh on margins for the time being. So let's get into the business. Time for our CFO briefing. With us is Martin de los Santos. He's CEO of the e-commerce firm MercadoLibre. He joins us from Montevideo, Uruguay, and he will be featured, we should point out, in the upcoming edition of the Bloomberg CFO Briefing newsletter, which you can sign up for at bloomberg.com/CFO briefing. Also with us is Nina Trentmann. She's Bloomberg News senior editor who writes the Bloomberg CFO Briefing newsletter. She's here in studio. Martin, great to have you here with Nina, Matt, and myself. Talk to us about the quarter, because it does seem that investors, analysts weighing in, that the biggest question is on investments and what you are doing, how they will provide some future growth. But welcome.
Thank you for having me. How are you? Yes, we had a great quarter, really, in terms of the results that we delivered. Revenues grew by 34% year on year. We delivered operating income, a record operating income of $825 million. But more important than that, we continue to grow our user base, both on our commerce and fintech platform. Our buyers on the commerce platform grew by 25% year on year. On fintechs grew by 30%. Credit book doubled year on year. GMV, which is the volume transacted on MercadoLibre, grew by 29%. In Brazil, 32% in Mexico. In both cases, we continue to gain market share. So very good, very strong operating metrics. And like you said, this particular quarter was a quarter of investments. We opened 2 new fulfillment centers to add to the more than 30 fulfillment centers that we have throughout the region. We also made a big change in terms of lowering the free shipping threshold in Brazil, which is a strategic move that we have been doing for many years, and it's paying off very nicely. And also we continue to invest in the credit card. But very excited not only about the results, but more important than that, about the future and the opportunity that we had ahead of us, both in commerce as well as fintech.
Martin, thank you for joining us. Actually, to follow up on that, and you mentioned the threshold for free shipping in Brazil as one of the contributors, I think, to you missing estimates for net profit as well as core earnings. I'm just wondering, as a CFO of a fast-growing business, how do you think about profitability and how do you manage the short versus long term?
We talked about this, Nina. I remember talking to you a few quarters ago. That's what we try to balance, right? We try to balance short-term profitability with the growth opportunities that we have ahead of us. So we want to make sure that we do not miss those opportunities. When you look at commerce, penetration of e-commerce in Latin America is roughly mid-teens, or 15%, compared to maybe 25%, 30 or 40% even in China or in the US. So there's plenty of room to continue growing. On the fintech side of the business, the same thing happened. Most people in Latin America have not been financially included by the financial system. So we see a large opportunity to expand our footprint on the fintech side of the business on Mercado Pago. So at the same time, to capture that opportunity, it requires investments. Some of those investments might put some short-term pressure. But I think this is a good example. When we lower the free shipping threshold, it does put pressure in the short term. But we have proven over time, and we've been doing this since 2017, when we introduced free shipping in Brazil. At that time, the free shipping threshold was 120 reais. We brought it down to 80, and now we brought it down to 20. So So we have proven over time that by lowering the free shipping threshold, we eliminate the most, the most frictional point in terms of buying things online for people. So we're eliminating that friction, really generates a lot more volume, and then eventually that translates into profit. So I think it's a strategy that has paid out to us, and the long-term investors of MercadoLibre understand it, and we're very comfortable with the investments that we're doing.
You mentioned Brazil. It's of course an interesting market. Just in the current tariff debates that we're seeing with the Brazilian government, so far holding out to Trump and basically not giving in on the Trump tariff suggestions for Brazil. Just wondering, in how far are you seeing that play out in terms of consumer confidence and consumer spending? Are you seeing any impacts in countries like Brazil? I know you're also doing business in Mexico and in other countries, all of which will face higher tariffs as part of the U.S. renegotiation of tariffs around the world.
Yes, Nina, this is something that we are monitoring closely. Obviously, we do not export into the US, so there's no direct impact on our business, but it can have secondary effects on the economy, as you mentioned. We have not seen that so far. As I mentioned earlier, we're growing by 29% our GMV in Brazil. Asset under management, which is the amount of money our users invest on MercadoLibre, more than doubled in Brazil year on year. Our credit card book has grown by 118%. The profitability or the asset quality of our credit book continues to be very solid in Brazil. So we have not seen any deterioration on macro or on consumption, but obviously it's something that we are monitoring closely.
Martin, buen dia. Matt Miller here in the studio with the ladies. I was really blown away by the growth at Mercado Crédito, and I wonder if you're watching closely for signs of credit stress there, because I think you had like 90% growth.
That's correct. Thank you for your question. Yeah, obviously, when we look at credit, we take it very seriously. We are very careful in the way we manage credit. By the way, I used to run the credit business before taking the position of CFO. So the first thing we look at is the health of our book. We saw that NPLs, and we disclose this number, are the lowest number in terms of, since we've been disclosing the metric. The NIMAL, which is the measure of profitability, is also improving quarter on quarter. So we see very healthy signs in terms of our book and in terms of our profitability. So the reason why you're seeing 91% growth in our credit book is because we are seeing good results in terms of our models, predicting default rates, and the quality of our credit book continues to be very healthy. If we did see something different, we will slow down because we're very cautious with the way we manage our credit business.
We are talking with Martin de los Santos. He's the CFO of MercadoLibre, joining us from Uruguay. We should also point out that this is the largest company. We should point Latin America's most valuable company if you think about market cap. So really significant. We were talking about fintech, and you were talking about kind of the health of that portfolio. But what can you tell us more, Martin, when it comes to the mix of customers that are in that portfolio?
I think what we're seeing is we're seeing all the different type of customers within the economic segments of the populations. Keep in mind that we acquire most of our credit users from the marketplace, and all types of people using our marketplace. So we have the advantage of having the distribution of MercadoLibre, but also the buying information that those people have on our marketplace, and we use that information through AI and machine learning models to score people, and we have models that are very accurate at predicting credit risk. So you will find people of all kinds of social levels within our ecosystem. So there are like half of the people that we offer credit to, we offer credit for the first time. They never had access to credit, but also the other half are people that we probably moving their fintech business to us because we offer a much better user experience than the traditional banks.
Martin, one question in terms of earnings. I noted that you also pointed out the impact of the Argentine peso on your results. Of course, we've seen Javier Milei make various changes in Argentina in recent months, including making changes to the country's currency, which has resulted in basically the the spread between the official and unofficial rate falling apart. Just wondering how that's impacting your business, and specifically also, are you changing your hedging strategy for Argentina?
Yeah, I think the headline for Argentina that we continue to see a big recovery. I mean, unique buyers in Argentina grew by 30% year on year. Our GMV grew by 75% in local currency or 35% in dollars. The items sold on the platform grew by 46%. So very strong recovery as we see inflation coming down, consumption improving. And also, as you mentioned, the FX market being normalized also helps our business. The open economy, so we're bringing more products from the US into Argentina as well. So most of the business are performing extremely well in Argentina, and we're very happy with the way things are going for our business there.
You mentioned, Martin, you ran credit before at MercadoLibre. You ran also strategy at Intuit, and you were at Bain before that, so you know strategy up and down. I want to know about your strategy regarding ad revenue, because it was also surged, like up 38%. Is that a profit center for you, a future profit center, or do you view that more as a tool to drive your core marketplace growth?
Yeah, our advertising business is roughly a $1 billion business. It's growing at 38%, as you mentioned, and it's a profit business for the company, but it has tremendous potential going forward. If you look at the number of people interacting with our ecosystem, last year we had more than 100 million people buying on MercadoLibre. We have 68 million monthly active users of our fintech platform. So in terms of the number of eyeballs within Latin America, we are the third largest pan-regional platform. And that gives us a great opportunity to continue distributing advertising. We also can leverage all the first-party information that we have on our users in order to target marketing campaigns. So we see a very large opportunity. I think it's more future than past on the advertising business. We're just getting started. But as you mentioned, we have been growing very rapidly for the past several years. There's plenty of growth going forward.
Mm-hmm. Martin, just got about 20 seconds. We always like to, when we've got lucky enough to have someone like yourself, a global CEO, how would you describe the global outlook, and just quickly?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously we operate in Latin America, and depending on the country, some countries have some tough micro situations, and some others might be in a better condition. We're talking about Argentina recovering. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I think in our business in particular, the trend of people moving online is so much stronger than macro that we have plenty of opportunities ahead of us. And the same thing on fintech, right? Where we operate in Latin America, where penetration of fintech products is very, very low. Right. We play a big role in terms of generating financial inclusion throughout the region. So we are very optimistic about macro, at least in our region.
So glad we could get some time with you. Martin de los Santos, CEO of MercadoLibre, CFO, of MercadoLibre. Gave him a little bit of a promotion. And Nina Trentmann, thank you.
It's 2:40 on Wall Street. I'm Amy Morris. The U.S. services sector effectively stagnated in July, with the Institute for Supply Management's index declining to 50.1. The employment index dropped to 46.4, contracting for the fourth time in 5 months. ISM saying the contraction does not appear to be coming from layoffs, but from a slowdown in hiring. We do check markets for you all day long at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is down 0.4%. NASDAQ is down more than 0.5%, and the Dow is now down 0.1%. The 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.19%. The 2-year yield at 3.72%. Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index little changed, and Bitcoin now 1.2% lower. The Kremlin is weighing options for a concession to President Trump, including an air truce with Ukraine to try to head off the threat of secondary sanctions, and that has moved energy markets. WTI and Brent crude each down around 1.6%. Yum Brands shares are more than 4.5% lower after the quick services restaurant chain operator reported slight shortfalls in adjusted EPS and comparable sales, including a miss for its Taco Bell unit. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Amy Morris. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now back to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Masser and Matt Miller.
All right, so appreciate it. Thank you so much, Amy Morris there in for Charlie Pellet. So we're keeping a watch on shares of Axon, gaining as much as, well, just shy of 19% today intraday, the most since February, enough to reach a record intraday high. Right now, the stock is up just under 15%. This is after the maker of tasers and other public safety equipment reported second quarter earnings per share that topped expectations. Analysts also noted strong bookings for the company's AI plan. What?
Look at the 5-year chart.
I know.
I mean, who cares about today? It's up 825% over the past 5 years.
It's had quite a run and a big move today. I should point out that coming off of earnings, several analysts, including Barclays and TD Cowen, raising their price targets on the stock. It is up more than 40% year to date. Let's get to it. Delighted to have with us Rick Smith, founder and CEO of Axon, to talk about the business, the outlook. Welcome, Rick. How are you?
I'm having a good day.
All right.
It's doing great.
You are having a good day. Talk to us about the business. Who's buying? What's going on? We talk about tasers, but you go to your website, you guys have videos to remind us that you guys are not just about that. You're about a lot more.
Yeah, that's why we changed the name of the company to Axon a few years ago, because tasers, it is a sledgehammer brand associated with our less lethal weapons. That's where we started. That got us into body cameras to basically help protect the public and police by preserving a factual record of what they did. And then from there, we got into cloud software to manage all the data, and then the business just exploded. So today, we're the market leader in in-car video, obviously body cameras, record management systems, and drones and robotics through their partnerships or first-party things that we do. We're, I think, the largest virtual reality training business in public safety. And now we're also expanding into adjacent markets. Any enterprise that has a security function has to be able to communicate with their local police. And you can either do that through an old school 911 call, or we have a number of tools on our platform that allow you, for example, if you're a school or a business, to share your security cameras in an emergency with police. So if you have something like an active shooter, you're not trying to describe it over the phone. You can immediately give video access to law enforcement at your control. You can shut it off when it's not necessary. And then, of course, we're layering artificial intelligence on cross of this entire enormous network of sensors so that we can, try to make everybody a little bit safer. But also doing it in a way that, is very cautious about privacy to make sure we're doing this in a way that doesn't create, out of control surveillance.
Rick, your investors will know, analysts will know, but not everyone is familiar with your founding story, which is intensely personal. Give us a quick recap of that and tell me if you still see the company's mission, which is cutting police gun deaths, as realistically achievable in say, this decade. Yeah.
So I started this, I was in business school in Europe, and I was having dinner with some people there who were, we were all talking about our hometown, and they said, I would never go to America because of all the gun violence. And I said, well, hold on, it's not like you see on television. And then one of them asked me, do you know anybody who's been shot and killed? And as I thought about it, well, yeah, there's 2 guys from my high school football team. And look, we weren't super close friends, but that's not the point. The point of it was that all of us, I mean, I bet each of you know people in your immediate circle who've been shot and killed. This is a problem that touches everybody. And by the time I added it up, I think I know 5 or 6 people who've been shot and killed. And that just struck me as a bizarre state of the universe, that the way we protect ourselves in the 1990s, much less 2025, is shooting bullets at people. We were doing that with like pirates in the 1600s. And so we're on a mission to make the bullet obsolete by creating better technology, basically something similar to Captain Kirk's phaser from Star Trek fame. That's what we're out to build, because if we have that weapon, it would no longer make sense to shoot anybody. And yeah, we're getting pretty close. It's not wireless like Captain Kirk's, but we are approaching a level of reliability where we now have countries outside of the U.S. talking about using the taser instead of a gun. In the U.S., we wouldn't suggest that, but we can suggest that the taser is getting to the point where you would use it first. It would become your primary weapon, and the gun would be more of a backup only for the most extreme cases. And if we achieve that, then yeah, we think we can cut gun deaths in American policing by 50%. By 2033 is our goal.
So, as you can understand, we're all feeling a little sensitive this week here in New York City following the active shooter at a office building on Park Avenue last week, where individuals lost their lives, as well as a policeman lost his life. So tell me about the numbers where you are seeing that as a result of your devices, that things are getting better, at least for, police folks and security folks.
Well, we have not yet bent the curve, meaning we're not seeing the numbers coming down because the overall trend is still slowly inching upward, although this year it's lower than last year. But I think it's premature for us to claim that that is our effect yet. We do know that over the past 30 years I've been doing this, there's around 300,000 uses where police could have been legally justified to use lethal force, but they were able to resolve it with a taser instead. This next 2 years is going to really be critical because up until now, taser weapons have been largely used not really in the most critical situations. They would use it to capture somebody who is potentially violent but not an immediate risk. We've introduced a couple of key technologies that we're testing now in the field, and I can go into detail if you're interested, that we think move our effective reliability up into the 99% area, at which point then we think it becomes reasonable that police would begin using taser as their primary first weapon, always keeping the gun as a fallback.
Rick, you mentioned business school in Europe. I guess you went to school in Belgium before Chicago, but you studied first neuroscience at Harvard. How does that kind of background influence your decisions today at a company that, touches so many nerves?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole name of the company, Axon, is a little bit of neurobio geek speak, because the axon is the name of the long nerve fibers that connect your brain to your muscles. And indeed, it touches a number of ways. When I first wrote my college application, and actually showing my son, I had a copy of it. They asked, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I wanted to build robotic limbs. And it was like Luke Skywalker's, robotic hand. I love this idea of a machine that can interface to the human body and almost become a part of you. Then after this incident and my interest rising in gun violence, I took a different turn. Instead of building a machine that your brain could control, I build machines that control your body through your nervous system. I mean, that's what a taser does. We plug in, we tune this electricity so that it overwhelms communication, and you have something that looks like a seizure because we're flooding your nervous system with electrical energy. Your muscles lock up. I just saw 5 people volunteer here in my office this morning. It is a temporary effect, but it's extremely debilitating. And then if we think about the other parts of our business, when we got into the camera business, we realized the cameras themselves are kind of interesting, but it's not nearly the business that if we can connect all these sensors together and begin to think of this like a giant neural network, like for a police department like an NYPD with, 35,000 officers, what if we could begin to have live data feeds that would enable command and control in more real time, so we could identify, hey, this situation is escalating, let's send reinforcements before the officer even calls over the radio. Or we might even identify things like, hey, this situation over here is spinning out of control. If you think about all the horrible, policing situations like George Floyd over the past 10 years, I believe now that any one of those could be detected with AI running on the audio video feed of a camera. And that is a capability that we're building now. We do have live feeds now, but to have live feeds being AI monitored in real time, that'll happen in the next 12 months. And I think that's going to be a huge boon to make policing more effective, safer, and to help agencies identify if a situation's spinning out of control so they can intervene now instead of, prosecuting somebody tomorrow, if something wrong is happening.
How much of your business is governments? And I'm just curious, it does feel like there's going to be some municipalities under pressure in terms of funding. And I'm just curious how that could play into impact demand at your company.
Yeah, so we're still majority government business, but the fastest growing segment is enterprise. And so the enterprise security is 2 to 3 times larger than public, policing in the United States in terms of manpower. And so there's a huge opportunity there. But if I come back to your question about municipal policing, I remember the 2008 financial crisis and others. And what we have found is if you look at a police agency, the majority of their spend is on cops, cars, and gas. That's like 90-some% of their spend. Mm-hmm. So their tech spend is a relatively small portion of their overall budget. And when budgets get compressed, what we see is they really look to technology where they're saying, look, we need to get more efficient. We can't just throw bodies at things. And I'll give you one example. Our first major AI product using generative AI is a service called Draft One. And what we do very simply, we take your body camera footage, we feed it through an AI model, and we actually just use the audio. We don't even need the video. We use the audio track, and we do the first draft of your police report. Because it turns out, police interactions are pretty standard. Hello, ma'am, what's your name, date of birth? Do you know why I stopped you? And you can, from that, extract the information that we need to put the structured report narrative together to about the 80% completion. And that basically means we're cutting the amount of time police spend on bureaucracy by up to 60 or 70%, which means they're out doing more police work.
Huge, because only 14% of police departments across the nation are actually fully staffed. And in the most recent survey, 75% of police who responded said they do want AI to help them out. It seems like, and this is not a pun on your neuroscience degree, but it seems like a no-brainer.
It's a little bit of a pun.
I'm a little biased, but I think so.
Hey, just 30 seconds. I'm curious because we talked about, I think robotics kind of came up, and you talked about your interest.
Empire Strikes Back. The last scene, Luke Skywalker with his hand.
Yes. Is robotics something that you guys are thinking in terms of security going forward? Is that an area that you guys might pursue at some point?
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. The solution to the American gun violence problem, in my personal belief, is we've got to change the game. And what I mean by that is today when an active shooter shows up, they have no illusions they're going to come out of it alive. They want to go down in some sick, twisted vision of a glorious gun battle with the police. In a couple of years, we are going to deny them that. If you show up with a gun somewhere, we will zip in very quickly with a robot using less lethal force. You'll be arrested and under control very quickly, and we're going to deny them the entire sort of motivation to get in gunfights. And I think we can do things with drones and robotics that you could never do with people, and we can do it without having to resort to lethal force. So stay tuned. We're making a big play in that space.
Sounds like you got to come back real soon. So appreciate it. So appreciate it. Rick Smith, Be Well, founder and CEO of Axon, joining us on this Tuesday. And as we mentioned, we're seeing that stock move in a big way following its latest results. Let me just pull it up for you.
Can I add that guy to the list of guests?
Don't take him.
I steal from your show
you steal
and
everybody.
use on my show.
Do not have Matt co-host anymore. Done. All right.
No, what a story. I mean, what an incredible... The stock chart is amazing.
I know.
But the story behind it...
Right.
I mean, he started that company in 1993.
Well,
he's been at this for 32 years.
I love these people who have different backgrounds. It's like doctors who are engineers who are looking at the body in a different way. But here he is in terms of his background and understanding how the brain works and the impact on things. He's ours. Just kidding. Just kidding. Great conversation. If you missed any of it, check out our podcast. I'm Carol Massar along with Matthew Miller. Let's take a look at some stocks on the move today. With us is Bloomberg News cross-asset reporter Isabelle Lee here in studio. We got to talk about VRTX Vertex.
We do have to, because it's down almost 20%. That's the most since October 2020 and the lowest since December 2023. So the shares really fell after an experimental pain drug failed to provide post-surgery benefits. So of course, the FDA said they don't really see a path forward for widespread use of this pill, because if it didn't work, why use it? And this is interesting because Vertex has been trying to diversify beyond its core business of cystic fibrosis treatment. And a key part of that is this one. And it's actually the first new type of painkiller to reach the U.S. market in more than 2 years. But it didn't really pan out. RBC Capital Markets said that the setback should cause a rethink of the risk profile for the pain franchise.
All right, so that one taking a big hit. Stock overall down about 5% year to date. Let's go to something that we talked about in the aftermarket last night because it reported a result. We're talking about Hims and Hers.
Hims and Hers shares are lower by almost 12%. So the company missed revenue estimates. So they recorded sales below average estimate, but they did reaffirm their full year revenue guidance. But Citi said this is a difficult quarter for Hims. Morgan Stanley said investors will need to be patient. So Hims really has gotten a boost from selling cheaper versions of popular weight loss drugs, but that has since been in peril because the FDA ordered many companies to really just stop selling copies of name brands made by Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk.
I wonder if the ticker's wrong now, because the ticker is HIMS, Hims. But now, I mean, that's because they used to sell like hair loss drugs and erectile dysfunction drugs.
What do you think it should be?
Well, now, I don't know, but surely there are a lot more Hers that are customers of that company now that they sell the weight loss drugs. I don't know how the numbers shake out.
So what are you just saying? Women take weight loss drugs?
No. I desperately want to get some too.
I know a lot of dudes taking it.
It's all over my Instagram feed. Like, I'm there. I'm ready to pull the trigger. I'm just saying that maybe half of their customers now are women, or at least a quarter. So the HIMS ticker just doesn't make as much sense.
Maybe we or us.
As it once did.
Or them.
TAP is the ticker for Molson Coors, even though I'm guessing most of the people
Isabelle, when he loses, he switches gears.
who drink it in this country
Nice pivot.
drink out of a bottle or a can. And also, fewer and fewer people have been drinking it in America.
That's exactly right. So shares are up 1.5%, but they shipped less beer in America. Beer sales fell again. They've been really trying to counter a shift away from beer, as more people, I guess, turn to spirits,
If Tim was here,
canned cocktails.
He's all non-alcoholic beer.
I'm all for non-alcoholic too, actually.
Yeah.
I don't drink non-alcoholic beer. I don't drink alcohol.
I think you don't drink.
But then I don't want a non-alcoholic beer. Why have the calories if it's not going to give me a little boost, right? I'd rather have...
There is that.
A cannabis cocktail.
What do we need to do?
Did you say cannabis cocktail?
No, I didn't say. But you know what I feel that with? Fizzy water. When I first moved here, that's such a thing. And I feel like every time I drink it, I'm fooling myself because it doesn't taste like anything, but it's painful in the throat. Anyway, so
Just
they
quickly, tap, go.
They lowered their full year guidance for the second quarter in a row. They really cited weak consumer, falling U.S. share, and rising costs tied to aluminum tariffs. So not looking good for them. And again, less people are drinking beer.
But the stock's up 1.6%.
Fewer, less, much, and more. Thank you.
My daughter just corrected me last night on that.
Well,
you people are annoying.
There are rules. This is not nom.
Fewer.
Carol.
I know. TAP was up as much as 5%, but paring that back to about a 1.6% gain. Isabelle Lee, thank you so much for putting up with Matthew Miller. We really appreciate it. For more conversations, check out our Stock Movers podcast, 5-minute episodes of the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. All right, we're getting ready to wrap up the first hour of Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. We've got the close coming your way in just a moment on Bloomberg TV. Romaine and the team. I think Scarlett and Romaine.
Looking forward, as we see markets continue to struggle, right? The S&P down 0.4%, the Dow off 50 points.
We're going to get into why baby boomers retirement and why rates are so high. We're also going to get some earnings talk.
Why rates may go higher, right? They're pretty low, 420.
Angie CEO is also going to come along. How you can get your, we'll talk later.
House fixed.
Yes.